you very much. I have a number of questions and one or two comments. Social Justice Ireland, first of all, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
And I welcome the opportunity to ask questions, and I actually found the whole report, the report at the end of 2015, very interesting. And Social Justice Ireland has pointed out that in 2014, without social welfare benefits, half of the Irish population would have been living in poverty. Right? So that's the context of my questions today. Half of the Irish population would be living in poverty. And so you have a very onerous task on your hands in relation to equality. And let me preface my remarks also by saying, in the context of the mistakes, and I agree with my colleague, Deputy Burke, that it's a huge budget. It's 19-point-something billion, and obviously mistakes will occur. And I'll be coming back to those mistakes because they're not mentioned in terms of your opening statement, but fraud is mentioned. And also in the Tribune lately in Galway, war on social welfare. So I'm going to come back to that because crackdown on fraudsters, revenue and social welfare and guards out on the streets of Galway. Now, on your policy document, you make a statement, and today in your opening statement you make the point that the vast majority of people are not cheaters. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
And they get what they're entitled to. And yet we have these type of headlines. You're not in charge of those headlines, obviously you're not, but the paper is, and obviously they're basing it on what they heard from revenue and from social welfare. And so we have the guards out on the streets of Galway stopping cars and delightfully telling us, the paper, that they're stopping 4x4s to collect because of cheats. Now, I think that's a very unhelpful message. I really do, and I might come back to it later, and I'll use my time now for questions. Okay. In relation to, I'm sort of going to go around here, the most obvious one, the public service card and the rollout of it. It would seem to be an unmitigated disaster, and I choose those words reluctantly. 60 million, and we still do not have cards for everybody. Isn't that right? 3 million were to be rolled out by 2013. We're now in 2016, and we have 2 million, 2.2 rolled out.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a huge problem, isn't it? 3 million to be rolled out by in 2013. We're now in 2016. You've given reasons why, and.
Yeah, but maybe, Deputy, if I could explain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that, again, it would be most... I certainly cannot accept your suggestion that this is an unmitigated disaster. Okay. Far from it, in fact.
Oh, okay, I accept your response.
I think you have to look at the history and development and context of the card. This is a cross-governmental project which owes its origins back to the mid-2000s.
2004.
Yeah, and government made decisions at that point that this was worth pursuing. Yeah. The department went to the market in 2009, and in 2009 secured, kind of as the first phase of development, to actually whether in fact the market could respond and give us what we were looking for in terms of a secure identity card that could be used for accessing public services, that we could base it on the information that we hold in our client identity services based on a registration process which had yet to be designed.
Can I stop you there, Mr. O'Donoghue?
Sure.
Because that's been outlined clearly, and in fairness to yourself, you've outlined it in your opening statement.
Well, again, if I could just make the point about...
I will let you. But what's been highlighted was you didn't have a business plan. You didn't assess the risk. You didn't assess the competency of your department to roll this out, or the contractor. And my additional question is, why wasn't it re-tendered when all of these problems emerged? Was it ever considered to re-tender it? So business plan, failure to risk and give an analysis. And so just those questions.
Okay, well, I don't accept we didn't have a business plan. We didn't have a single document business plan. I think there are all sorts of documentation which we have provided and which the C&AG in his report has acknowledged have been provided, contain most of the elements that would have been contained in a single business plan, but not in one single document. I think that's probably fair to say. The point I was making about the history, Deputy, which is incredibly important, because in terms of risk and in terms of what might happen, I think there are very few people in 2009 who would necessarily have been able to foresee exactly what would happen over the following 3 to 4 years in terms of general environment and society, and most particularly its impact on the department. And that's quite apart from the actual project itself. In the first place, obviously, when we signed the contract in 2009, we envisaged absolutely that we would be focusing on this as a priority project over the following couple of years, and we'll be rolling out public service cards. But in 2010, 2011, 2012, our actual baseline activity changed out of proportion to anything we would have experienced before. As a consequence, we had to prioritise actually providing income support service people over and above anything else that we might have been doing. Additionally, in 2010, government made a decision which we would not have been privy to in 2009 to basically change the entire institutional infrastructure of the department in relation to how we dealt with people of working age. We were required to integrate staff from the Community Welfare Service, staff from the employment services of FOSS, as had been there, and build a whole new business model and offering. So an enormous organisation programme change that we couldn't have foreseen in 2009. Now, talking about the project itself, yes, there were difficulties. I mean, the company involved had to build a plant in order to actually effect production. So that phase of the project to actually see could they produce a card within time, that came on board. Our expectation that in the initial stages of the public service card, in fact, that priority would be affected to giving public service card to those who are entitled to free travel, that would be the first offering. Because we wanted to replace the free travel card. As it happened, despite all goodwill and all effort between ourselves and the National Transport Authority, as it was at the time, they weren't in a position. There were delays in relation to developing the infrastructure for the LEAP card and all the rest, which meant they weren't able to offer or to integrate with our card at a time. So, I mean, there were all these kind of reasons.
Can I stop you there? You're saying that events overtook, the economy overtook,
yes,
changes, pressures on the organisation, and so on. That's what you're saying in relation.
I think that in a context when we were able to put the staffing in place, when we were able to actually start effecting a registration process. And sorry, the other piece that I should make is that at the time when we were developing the card, yes, we were operating on the basis that potentially this card, the registration processes would be carried out by the department. But that was by no means an absolute assumption. It could also have been possible that that would have been contracted out to another tenderer if we had felt that was the appropriate thing to do. However, the point I would make, Deputy, is that when we actually got into full production of the card, when we put the infrastructure in place to actually register people, the kind of production volumes that we have managed to deliver are very much in order or in keeping with what we would have envisaged in the original plans for the card. So if you look at the kind of, over a 3 to 4 year time span, we will be issuing 3 million cards, which would have been our intention at 2009, but for the
intention was to have the 3 million at the end of 2013.
Yes.
I hear what you're telling me, and I hear your reply. But unfortunately, what's highlighted here is that, and actually, I think the Controller and Auditor General has been fair, or the examination team in their analysis, and they've given green lights for certain things in their analysis. But the two that stick out, which are the ones I've highlighted, assessment of the organisation capacity to undertake the project, benefits realisation plan. Okay, that wasn't mentioned at all by you. What benefits? And I know in your opening statement there was about 2.5. What was the figure for the savings?
Well, the savings are in relation to people who have actually been caught using fraud.
Right. What was that figure?
It's 2.565.
Yeah, that's what you found out, but there was no actually analysis of what you were going to save.
Again,
just let me finish. For spending, that's okay. For spending, sorry, now we're under pressure ourselves. For spending 60 million. And that's still not finished. And actually, is there any guarantee that we'll have the 3 million in the time that you anticipate by the end of 2017?
I would absolutely hope so. I can't guarantee.
No, well, it's beyond hope, you see. We're beyond where it's plans. What is planned? What is set out? What is your capacity to deliver?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, sorry, I will try to answer.
That's okay. I'm going to let you now. I'm going to stay quiet.
Basically, what we have focused on over the last couple of years is using the card, or rolling out the card amongst customers of social welfare or social protection in the first instance. The real value to the card is obviously its use across the wider public service. And what has further been developed, and the Controller has made mention to it, is that we have now built the infrastructure to use the identity set in an online setting, which obviously is increased attraction across other public service offers as well, which wouldn't have been envisaged back in 2005. What has now happened is that the card has been a cornerstone of kind of the public service reform plan, the civil service renewal plan. It has now been adopted as a specific whole-of-government project by the Civil Service Management Board. There is a new cross-departmental committee which has been put in place, which is all about designing the expansion of use of card to others. I did mention, Deputy, the fact that Revenue are going to use the card in the context of registrants for tax. The Passport are now using the card in the context of applicants for passports. We are in discussions with the Road Safety Authority in terms of driver licence and vehicle registration. All of those things would give me confidence that we will achieve the 3 million.
I think we would expect a business plan. I think we would expect it laid out what you anticipate the savings are, and that wasn't done. And just to finish with legislation and privacy and the Data Commissioner, and there was an activation. There was part of the plan was an activation of the card, wasn't that right? What did that cost?
The activation process has cost somewhere over 2 million. This was something that was put in place at the request of the Data Protection Commissioner after the contract was signed.
I accept that and I see it. But then it was stopped. Then it was stopped. So just clarify to me how you didn't stop it and the Data Commissioner no longer had any concerns.
Because the concern that was voiced by the Data Protection Commissioner why the activation process was put in place was to ensure that the right person actually received the card.
Yeah, so when I got the card, I rang back. There was a code and it confirmed I was the right person.
What we're now operating on the basis of that, first of all, the card issues within a very short time of a face-to-face engagement with the individual, so it's within a matter of days. So various verifications have taken place at that face-to-face engagement, including verification of address and verification of telephone, mobile number, etc.
And is the Data Commissioner satisfied with that now?
Well, I mean, the Data Commissioner is aware of what we have done and why we've changed it.
Your justification for the activation scheme that cost 2.6 million, was it? Was the Data Commissioner's concerns?
But it was a requirement asked of us by the Data Protection Commissioner.
And did he then come back and say you don't need to do that anymore?
Well, it's a different Data Protection Commissioner, and she is aware of what we're doing. So, and she hasn't voiced a concern that, but because of
perhaps the cost of 2.6 million wasn't necessary in the first place. The expense.
Possibly, but it's a matter of viewpoint. Obviously, this was a requirement from the Data Protection Commissioner at the time, which we adhered to. Finally, Deputy, if I could, because you've talked about the benefits analysis. Yeah. The critical thing about benefits is that this is a whole-of-government project. The benefits will be realised right across the public service. The department is not in a position to identify the benefits right across the public service because most of the benefits are small. It's about people having to repeat an identification verification process in their transactions with every public service provider. So they're small in individual item, but they build up. But it's hard for us to articulate.
So at some stage before this committee, we could have a report back from the relevant department to tell us what the savings are for the 60 million spent.
In time, absolutely, but it's not 60 million spent in isolation. Remember, we're replacing other infrastructure that otherwise would have cost.
In relation to privacy and legislation, I understand there's legislation promised in relation to the sharing of data.
In general, but not in a social welfare context and not in relation to identity data.
Okay. No. In relation to social protection and fraud, just let me go back to your opening statement where you said that there were two major, I've lost it somewhere now, but you left out the major one. I have it here, yeah. The three key elements are income support, activation of people of working age and the control of fraud and abuse. Error isn't mentioned there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's significant because, as my colleague has pointed out, there are significant errors that the Controller and Auditor General has highlighted from your point of view, errors from you with cost implications. That's not mentioned in the opening statement. Number two, what's more important from the You have a very important role in policy that you haven't mentioned at all in your opening statement. And if we go back to your document, I would see one of your more important roles is to formulate appropriate social protection and social inclusion policies. So your policy role is very important, given the role of social welfare in keeping most of our citizens out of poverty. So you left it out of your opening statement, which is significant for me, and you're zoning in on three. Obviously, the working, the support for people is very important, but the control of fraud and abuse, as opposed to your policy role, as opposed to the errors made by yourself. Okay. So I would just ask you to reflect on that.
Okay. Two things, Deputy. The Department advises on policy, but obviously policy is a government process.
No, it's actually in here, the Department, its business and organisation, your department. The main functions of the Department are to advise government and formulate appropriate social protection and social inclusion policies.
Yeah, but it's an advice. The government makes decisions on policy.
No, but it's your role. It's the Department's role to do that. It's one of your major aims. So if I come back now to social protection and the overpayments.
Well, sorry, again, if I may just come back to the point you were talking about, error. Yeah, our control policies are about trying to remove fraud, abuse and error. And sorry, if I left out the word error, my apologies, but absolutely it's as important, and we have taken a range of initiatives to try and do that. I take your reassurance
about that. It's just not included. And when you look at these screaming headlines, you can see the narrative in relation to social welfare.
I don't write the headlines.
Well, no, but something has to emanate from these departments for that to go into the paper. But in any event, I think I have 3 minutes left, Chairperson. I'll make use of those 3 minutes. 1 second. Now, in relation to personal injuries and legal costs, can you help me with that a little bit? It's on page 35 of the appropriation accounts. So we have claims by employees of the department and claims by members of the public in relation to personal injuries.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, obviously we offer or operate a range of public offices, so we will have people come into offices and unfortunately have accidents like slip on steps or fall ill or whatever, you know, like, so there could be personal injuries claims there. Equally, from a staff point of view, sorry, I mean, so there's a whole range of different things, both in terms of personal property and medical expenses and personal injuries. Yeah.
Is there a rise in them, a rise in the number, or have you reviewed them to look at why? There are obviously injuries with people coming into your premises.
Yes.
And then there are injuries within the staff, which are down.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably, again, because of the increased increased number of customers coming into us and increased activity. There has been an increase in the last number of years. But in the scheme of things, it's actually very small number. Okay. But obviously, we take everything very seriously in relation to anything that might happen.
I've run out of time, McBack. My last question is in relation to premises and the renting of premises. I understand you own one premise. Is that correct? The Department of Social Welfare actually own one premise?
Well, it's the Social Insurance Fund owns one premise, which in fact is our headquarters building. All of the rest
are rented premises.
No, sorry. A lot of our offices would be owned by the state, but they'd be owned by OPW, not by the department.
Could you clarify that for me, if not now, to come back in relation to how many buildings are owned by the Office of Public Works and how many are rented? I understand the one in Galway is rented from a private individual or a company.
It is, yeah. We have a new office.
Do you have the figures for the rent of that?
I don't, Deputy, but we'll
I would appreciate
that
because I asked a parliamentary question on that and I understand it's over $500,000. But what I didn't clarify, was it for the whole building or was it for different floors? And where would I see that in the accounts? Where would I see the rent?
It's OPW.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So that rent is paid?
By OPW.
Not by the Department of Social Welfare?
No.
So, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And sorry, Deputy, it's the whole building the department has.
It's the whole building for that.
Yeah,
what's the figure, so? What is the figure for the rent?
I
thought your colleague knew. No, I thought your colleague knew.
Absolutely, Chair.
No, it was just that your colleague said it's for the whole building, so I was wondering.
No, we occupy the whole building.
Well, I know you do, but is the rent for... There are 3 floors in it, or a number of floors. So that's
the whole building. Whatever the rent is that's being paid, it's for the whole building.
Is Does the payment come out of your vote or OPW vote?
No, it's the OPW vote.
Vote. We will write directly to the OPW.
Yeah.
Just to be helpful, on page 9 of the appropriation account, there is the net allied services expenditure note. It's at the bottom of page 9.
I see that. And the, no, on the bottom of page 10, the breakdown of net allied service expenditure.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it's. I'm using a different code. If you see there, vote 13, Office of Public Works. There's a figure in expenditure on the OPW vote of 13.9 million related to provision of services and accommodation to the department. And there's a notional rent figure. If you can you just go up slightly? A notional rent figure of 10.9 for buildings which are state-owned. And that's an estimate of the value of those. So it's I suppose, an accommodation bill of about 25 million. 25 million? Yeah, in total, for all the buildings.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.